Welcome to Precinct 444, a podcast by the National Law Enforcement Museum located in Washington, D.C. Here at Precinct 444, we cover a wide range of topics surrounding American law enforcement through our 4 core shows and bonus content. Today and in future bonus episodes, we will feature an artist from our current exhibit, Officers as Artists, so they can talk about their law enforcement careers and art interests. Be sure to check back every other week as we publish more episodes featuring an artist. And remember, our core shows are released every other Wednesday, so don't miss those. Thanks for listening, stay safe, and come see us in Washington, D.C.
Welcome back to Precinct 444. I am here today with another installment of our Officers as Artists exhibit conversations with our artists that are featured in our newest exhibit at the National Law Enforcement Museum. Today, I am joined by Chad Bingham, who is the artist behind One Last Ride, which is a watercolor portrait of a canine officer. I will have Chad introduce you to the canine that's in that piece, or tell us a little bit about the story behind the canine in that piece, I guess I should say. So let's get this on the road. So Chad, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us a little bit about your piece that's in the exhibit?
My name's Chad Bingham. I've been in law enforcement for almost 25 years now. Current at a sheriff's office here in Colorado, and I've been there for coming on 19 years. I'm assigned to the patrol division, and I'm also I'm assigned to a lot of stuff. I'm part of our canine unit as a handler for a dual purpose explosives / apprehension dog, which also puts me on the bomb squad. And we are also attached to SWAT as a canine unit.
And tell us a little bit about One Last Ride. And for some reason, I am blanking on the name of the canine that you have in the piece.
That was my first dog, Paul. I got him 2015. He was a narcotics apprehension dog. He was a thug, but that dog loved his job. The lady who actually sold him to our department knew from a young age that he wanted to work and he needed to find his pack. And his pack was the SWAT team. He loved the tone would go off to go to work, and he would come running in the bedroom, and he was just like, "Get your stuff on. What's taking you so long? Let's go." Let's go. He just loved his job. He was at home, he was just a normal dog. And he was a rock star.
Very cool. And it's one of the first pieces that when you or any of our visitors kind of walk into the exhibit, it's one of the pieces that kind of opens up the show. And it's a part of law enforcement that, I mean, we feature canine officers in our permanent exhibit. One of our activities that we always have when we have a family day or something like that is a canine demonstration. So canines are something that everybody associates with law enforcement, and that definitely your piece has shown the experience of a canine officer in a very good and a very unique way, I think, in this exhibit. So let's talk a little bit more about the piece. It's a watercolor painting, but you have some kind of unique elements and even unique mediums that you're using in addition to that watercolor paint. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what makes One Last Ride so unique?
So it was something I stumbled across. Actually, my first painting of Paul, it hangs up in our living room, that I saw somebody paint with tea. I believe it's an old Japanese technique. And I was like, boy, I wonder if you could do that with coffee. So I started looking around and I saw people who were doing it with coffee. And I said, well, the browns and colors you can get with coffee would be pretty cool for a dog. So I tried one with him, and it just came out amazing. So in that one, I've kind of expanded its ink, coffee, and watercolors, and then some ink and maybe occasional like colored pencils or something to kind of tighten up some lines. But the base of all the canine portraits that I do are coffee.
Yeah, and that's really cool, and kind of as much of a stereotypical nod to maybe to law enforcement, but coffee is a very essential part of my job. Just working in programs at the National Law Enforcement Museum. So I could not imagine being a law enforcement officer without some kind of coffee. So I think that really fits in very well as kind of a nod to the profession as well. Something inspired you to start creating, and obviously you've used it as a way to honor the canine partners that you've had over the years. But what inspired you to start painting? Is that something you've always done, or was that something that you just picked up along the way?
Oh no, since I was my parents have always told me since I was a small child, like I've always loved art. I'm a huge, like, I love comic book art, but any kind of art I can appreciate anything. Like I'm always amazed by people who can do any kind of art, no matter what it is, the creativity, and there's just every one of them's unique, like the dogs. Like every artist is unique in their own way, just like our dogs are. And it's just such a I just been doing it for so long, but the dog thing is
Mhm.
a new thing for me. And it's really kind of it's kept me really busy now because it's something I'm starting to do. Not It's my part-time gig, I guess.
Mhm.
I love the opportunity of these people who see me and then come to me and are like, hey, I want you to paint my dog. And whether it's a working dog, a military police, or a pet dog, like the bond that you have with your pet is something else. But then a bond with a dog as a handler, I spent 40 hours plus a week with Paul. I mean, we were together almost all the time, and that bond and friendship and the good times we had, like, to be able to take somebody else's dog and give them something unique and different so they never forget them, and there's always a reminder, is special. Because people come up to me, or when they get them, they're just, they've been in tears, or they're just like, this is amazing, this is the neatest thing. And they send me pictures of them hanging up in their house, and it's just so cool to help carry on these dogs that are we spend so much time with us after they're gone.
Absolutely. And do you find that obviously you've kind of shifted into this area of painting canines, whether they be pets or former working dogs, active working dogs, things of that nature. So in a way, your career has kind of led you to at least this aspect of your creativity. But do you find that your identity as an officer influences your identity as an artist, whether it be for things that you're being commissioned to paint or even things that you just kind of paint in your spare time?
They used to be pretty separate worlds, to be honest
Mhm.
with you, but now I never thought I'd paint dogs. Like it's
Mhm.
kind of funny. Like it's what I do now. And I don't it's weird. I never thought that's what I would do. Like I always wanted to draw comics or be an animator or
Mhm.
something like that, but now, now I paint dogs, and it's every one of them's unique and everyone's different. No two things are alike, no two paintings are alike. And I try
Mhm.
to, when I do them, create them, the handler or owner will tell me something about them, and I try to, like,
Yeah,
infuse that in there. So, like, whether it's a toy or like what their job was, or just something super unique, so that when they get it, they're like, that
Mhm.
reminds me of the dog so much, the one, I just try my hardest to make them the most unique thing, like their dogs.
Definitely. And I think you kind of alluded to you always thought you'd be doing uh like working as a comic book artist or something like that. What led you to a career in law enforcement?
I'm not going to joke. I needed a job.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
I I had a kid on the way, and my art career really. I was doing graphic arts. Really, I mean, it was a good job, but it wasn't
Mhm.
paying the bills like I had hoped. And then I went on a ride along. My family. I'm third generation law enforcement.
Okay.
So I went on a ride along, and thankfully I went with somebody who was really cool, and I was like, yeah, this is pretty neat. Like I could do this, and then started applying and been in it ever since.
And what led you to the more how did you fall into a like canine handler position? I guess
Uh,
follow-up question.
the agency I'm at now, one of my FTIs was a canine handler. And I knew, like, we had dogs growing up, but like, they were just dogs. But seeing him and seeing a working dog, I will never forget the first time we used his dog, and we sent him in to clear a building on a burglary. And I was like, this is freaking cool. Like, this is what dogs can do. And then like I said, hey, can I come out to one of your trainings? And I started going out to trainings, and like it just like it's just the best job in the world. It just not
It
something
just fell into place. Yeah.
if you went back and told, I don't know, 20 something or teenage Chad, this is what he'd be doing, they'd be like, what? No.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of us in our careers, and whether it be law enforcement or even something else, like we all kind of find ourselves at that point at some time or at some point in our lives, I think too. But I guess another question that I would ask, because art is it's a very therapeutic exercise, and a big theme that we've talked about with many of the other artists that have come through these interviews are the fact that art can be kind of a good place to release some of the stress that you experience on the job. Do you find that being creative and doing these paintings and things like that are very helpful for relieving some of the stress on the job? Or do you find it very separate from the work that you're doing?
I suppose it does. I guess the quote I always go back to, and I don't remember if it was one a famous artist, maybe Vincent Van Gogh or somebody like that.
Mhm.
But they said something to the effect of, somebody asked him like, why do you paint or whatever? And they said something like, well, it's an escape. And it really is, because like when I am painting or just doing art, like everything else, there's nothing else but that. And it's just you and a piece of paper and your tools, and you're trying to capture something or create something, and it just, like, everything else just disappears. That's the best way to put it. Like, that is the world for that period of time. That's it. There's nothing else.
Definitely. And if you could encourage any of your colleagues to take up something creative, what would you say to them?
Oh, do it. Like, there's guys that I work with that do woodworking, anything. Just make something. If there's something you're into, like, just make it, like, if you make holsters. Like, there's your art or your craft is yours. And like,
Mhm.
there's just so many, like, welders, there's just so many things. Like, if you got a hobby, and you need to have a hobby in this job, especially when you retire, um just do it. If you enjoy it, do it. And the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. And then you're just going to make crazy stuff. And someday somebody's going to be like, hey man, that's pretty awesome. And that, maybe turn it into a business. I don't know.
Yeah,
But just
definitely.
that
Some
way
it's for
get
some it
out of
turns
here.
into a business, for some it's just something that gives you
Yeah.
something to keep your hands busy. Yeah. Um, and I think even this exhibit is a great example. We've got 50 artists that are all doing, some of them have the same medium as each other, but everybody's result is so different from one another's. And some are very law enforcement related themes and some aren't. And it's just a good way to kind of show that, um, for us at least, looking at it from the museum perspective and being the ones trying to pull all of these pieces together, each of these artists is telling their own very unique story, and just an aspect of their full story, in each of these pieces. And they're very unique from one another, but they're each just as valid and just as important as the piece before it. So I think that's also a really important thing to point out, if that makes sense.
Well, I can attest to that, but I remember when I went out there, having never been a part of anything like that,
Mhm.
like, seeing my art hanging up on a wall was pretty amazing. But next to all, like, these 50 other people, and no two of them are remotely alike. No
Exactly.
two of them are remotely like the same subject matter. Like they're all so unique, and there were so many of them that even I looked at and I was like, man, I wish I could do something like that. But like, it was so cool to see people take, whether it was just a combination of their talent, their
Mhm.
trying to relieve stress, emotional response, whatever, just to see what they came up with. And there's so many, and all of the pieces there are amazing, and they're all so unique.
Absolutely. And that kind of takes us to our last question, which is kind of stems from the National Law Enforcement Museum seems like a rather unlikely place for an art exhibit, and yet here we have one, and we're featuring the stories of these 50 artists from around the country. So what does it mean to you to be among those artists and have a piece on display at the National Law Enforcement Museum?
We were out there in May for Police Week, right before, and I remember seeing walking by the sign, and I was like, it said calling all artists or whatever, and I
Mhm.
was like, well, that's pretty cool. Like maybe I'll try that, and no thought or hope or whatever that like I would be one of 50 people chosen, but I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give it a shot. This sounds pretty cool. And then when you guys came back and were like, yeah, we want to use your painting, I was like for real? Like you want
Mhm.
like like I've never had anything hung up since grade school, maybe in a hallway, but like never
Mhm.
in a museum of any kind, much less to be part of an exhibit. And it's just amazing. Like I don't know, like it's amazing. That's all I can say. And it warms my heart. Because Paul's hanging up at a museum, so people get
Mhm.
to see him all the time. And even though he's gone, like he's still here. So that's probably the neatest part. But yeah, I'd never thought in my life I'd be have art hanging up in a museum that I did.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's a very you're not alone with that sentiment either. So and for us we're very honored to have your piece and the other pieces that are on display here at the museum. It's a way to like our I always like to say in our programs and things like that that the museum exists to tell the stories of American law enforcement, both the broader stories and the individual stories of officers from around the country. And art is a very, like at its core, it is a storytelling medium, whether you're not necessarily using words, but you're using images and evoking emotion and depicting things that matter most to you. And I think this exhibit has been a really good way to showcase 50 of these very personal stories of law enforcement officers from around the country. And to honor Paul as well, who worked alongside you on the road for all those years. And it's one of those things where I feel like we're seeing officers in a very human way in this exhibit. And we're very pleased to be able to tell your story and, in an essence, Paul's story as well in this exhibit. So thank you, Chad, for sharing that with us.
No, I was glad. Thanks for picking it.
Of course. Yeah, that too. It's two-sided. But as we wrap up here, I'd like to invite all of our listeners to stop by the museum and see the Officers as Artists exhibit before it closes on August 30th of 2025. Come see Chad's piece, One Last Ride, and give Paul a visit before the exhibit closes this summer. We'd love to see you here in DC and give you a chance to experience these stories firsthand. So, Chad, thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you. It was awesome. Good times.
Grace.
Thanks for listening to this special bonus content featuring an artist from the museum's temporary exhibit, Officers as Artists, where the artworks of 50 law enforcement officers from all over the country are on display now through August 30th of this year. And remember, our core shows are released every other Wednesday, so don't miss those. Thanks for listening, stay safe, and come see us in Washington, D.C. Please subscribe to Precinct 444 on your favorite podcasting platform to stay connected and to receive our latest content as soon as it drops. We would love to hear from you. Send in your questions, comments, and feedback to precinct444@nleomf.org. You can help us make our content even better. The National Law Enforcement Museum is located at 444 East Street Northwest in Washington, D.C., and is dedicated to telling the story of American law enforcement. We expand and enrich the relationship between law enforcement and the community through educational journeys, immersive exhibitions, and insightful programs. Find us online at lawenforcementmuseum.org and stay tuned for more podcast content from Precinct 444. Until next time, stay safe. We'll see you at the precinct.